Welcome to episode 163 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourScreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing actor, writer, and producer Christina Moore. She just did a film called Running Wild starring Sharon Stone. We walked through the whole process from writing the script to getting it funded to getting Sharon Stone attached to the film. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 163. Just want to mention a free webinar that I'm doing on Wednesday, March 1st, 2017 at 10 a.m. Pacific time. It's called How to Effectively Market Your Screenplay and Sell It. I'm going to go through all the various online channels that are available to screenwriters and give you my unfiltered opinion of them. I get questions all the time about the blacklist, about Inktip, about various contests. So in this free webinar, I'm going to talk about my experiences with them. Again, this webinar is completely free. And don't worry if you can't make it to the live event. I'll be recording this event, so if you sign up, even if you can't attend it, you'll still get a link to the recorded event after it happens. To sign up, just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. And free webinar is all lowercase, all one word. So it's sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. Also, if you're already a member of my email list, you don't need to register for this. I will be sending out information about this free webinar to everybody who's already on my list. So once again, if this sounds like something you'd like to learn about, just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. So a quick few words about what I'm working on. Once again, the main thing I'm working on is post-production of my crime action thriller feature film, The Pinch. So I'm just going through the latest cut of the film and making my final set of notes. I'll hopefully be locking picture in the next week or so. Last week, I got a bit bogged down, had a couple personal issues, a couple of other side projects got busy, so I didn't have a lot of time to really work on The Pinch. But I did look through all the recent pickup shots. A couple of weeks ago, I worked with the editor. We did a couple pickup shots. We got those insert into the latest cut of the film. They all seem to work pretty well, so I think that's going to improve the film, and not a lot of editing, not a lot of extra editing on that. I mean, they were just establishing and such, so it was pretty easy to slide those in. They all look good. As I said, I think I'm pretty close. There's only a handful really of changes now for this next cut, so with any luck, by this time next week, fingers crossed, I will have locked picture. I've mentioned this before. I mean, when I originally set out on this, I was kind of hoping to have the film done by the end of 2016. Obviously, that didn't happen, and frankly, I'm not even that close to getting it finished. But when you're dealing with something super low budget, I just kind of keep reminding myself that the key is to try and make it as good as possible, not necessarily as fast. Do it as fast as possible. So I'm really trying to stick to that, and things are taking long. So now I'm thinking once I lock picture, we're halfway through February, March, April, May. I think I'll be lucky because there's going to be quite a bit of technical stuff once I lock picture, all the sound edit, dialogue editing, the sound mix, scoring it, special effects, color correction, all that stuff. Now, these different various people can be working simultaneously. But I think I'll be lucky if I can get through that process in 3 months. So as I said, we're almost here pushing up on the end of February. So then we're talking March, April, May. So if I can get it done by May or even June, that'd be fine. And we shot last July, so I don't know, maybe 1 year in post-production, especially for a super low budget feature is not a bad timeline. So I'm thinking, hopefully by April, May, hopefully somewhere in there. I'm going to say May. Worst case scenario, hopefully by the end of June, I will be completely done this project, and then I can start, going through the whole process of submitting it to film festivals, trying to find a distributor, and that whole next phase. But at least at that point, I'll be able to start really working on something else. Anyway, that's what I'm working on. So now let's get into the main segment. Today, I'm interviewing actor, writer, and producer Christina Moore. Here is the interview. Welcome, Christina, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Sure. So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up, and how did you get interested in the entertainment industry?
Sure. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and I did musicals. I'm a musical theater geek, really, at heart. And I went to college for musical theater, and then on a summer job, I broke my ankle in a lot of really interesting ways. And, that just kind of, I was really dancing with my forte. And when that kind of ended, it was like, well, the dream's not dead. It just may need to morph. And I feel like then, little did I know that I would do that repeatedly for 20 years, one, go down one avenue and then readjust and try something else. So I was always interested in storytelling, but primarily I got involved because I love the community. I love being part of a big group of people and having that family, let's put on a plane in a barn kind of deal. It's what sucked me in, and it's what kind of continues to suck me.
Yeah. And so what was your sort of first foray into the entertainment industry as a professional? What was that sort of break that you actually made something and got paid for it?
I moved out to LA right after college graduation, and I was pretty fortunate. Within 3 years, I had found my way into Warner Brothers, where there was a building. It was called Building 140. It was just casting directors up one side and down the other, and it was the heyday of must-see TV. So it was Friends, Suddenly Susan, Drew Carey, all Just Shoot Me, and I got on one of them, and then the casting directors would just say, like, hey, there's a new kid in town. You guys should have her in on your show. And I did that for a year, and then landed my first series, which was Hyperion Bay for the then WB, and kind of that was it. Then it was like, oh, you're vetted and you're in, and, it's not always been just constant jobs, but that got me out of waiting table.
And let's talk about just those, because I think there's going to be a lot of parallels between an acting career and a screenwriting career. But what did you actually do to get onto the Warner Brothers lot? I mean, there's a security guard at the front gate. I'm sure every actor in town probably knew that there was a lot of casting going on. So what were those, tips and tricks to actually get in front of those casting directors and get noticed by them?
Oh, yeah, right? Getting noticed. It was really because I had a manager who I had met because she came and trolled acting classes. She wanted to watch and kind of see what the young talent was doing. And so because I had a manager, then I got an agent, and the agent was the one that got me the audition.
I see.
I wouldn't be anywhere without my representation. Again, this is 20 years ago, so it's become your own YouTube sensation. I think the kids are really a lot more in control of their own destinies right now. Like, I do a blog, and I'm a Viner, and I have an Instagram, and I have a Twitter account, and I'm putting out my own content, and look at me. And, especially 20 years ago, it was really, you needed someone to make that introduction for you. And I was lucky enough to have good people on my team.
Perfect. So let's dig into your latest film, Running Wild, starring Sharon Stone, and you were a producer as well as a writer on that project. So maybe you can talk a little bit about just that transition from going from actor to producer and screenwriter. Why did you want to make that transition, and how did you actually make that transition?
Right? It's a little bit of miracle, I think. The executive producer of our company is a friend of mine, and we literally go back 22 years where I waited tables at Jerry's Deli, and his brother was a manager. And so we've known each other forever, and he had been given the assignment to write a movie featuring horses, and he knew that I had a love of horses, and he knew that they definitely wanted it to be a female lead, and so he was like, hey, you got any ideas? And so I pitched him some, and then, in a really weird way, then it was like, okay, we're going to make this movie, and you need to write a script, and I was given a writing partner who is a very talented, very established screenwriter, so he was really the spirit guide in terms of knowing where the beats were and knowing what the structure was. But I had to do all of the equine research and get my cowboy spirit guides to load me up with everything that there was about horses. And then because it was a female lead and a female antagonist, that was really my voice. And so, it was an absolute collaboration. And then once the screenplay was done, and they were going to go into production, I went back to my friend and said, you should let me produce it. And he said, you don't know anything about producing. And I said, yeah, but I didn't know anything about screenwriting, and that turned out pretty well. So I know everything about horses, and I've got the Spirit Cowboys, and if you don't have me along, you're missing something, and I can do rewrites, and I'll balance the books, and I'll learn how to do, accounting, whatever. And so I really just looked at it like film school, but because the company was nice and small, really we all had to wear 18 hats. And so it was a little bit like baptism by fire or jumping right into the deep end. And it's one of the greater experiences in my life.
Mm-hmm. And I'd be curious to get your thoughts. I get a lot of, obviously, screenwriters coming to the site, but I will occasionally get actors that have written a screenplay, and their scripts are usually pretty good. And I would be curious to kind of hear how much you think your acting career, obviously a 20-year acting career, you've been reading a lot of scripts, but so I'd be curious to see how much that you think that helped, just sort of being in the industry and working as an actor, how much that helped you in writing this first screenplay.
Oh, I mean, it has everything to do with it. I mean, number one, I'm an avid reader, and I do believe that storytelling across all mediums, I mean, I'm a kind of a book a week kind of gal, so there's a lot about story and character and structure and feeling that you get by being a connoisseur. And then in terms of, being an actor, if it's 20 years and let's just say on an average it's 100 auditions a year, that means I've read 100 scripts. In a year, 10, 20 years, was that 20,000 scripts? Again, and I really love the art form, and I really love, I know when something feels right and I know when something is working. I think the big difference in just being an actor is you're really responsible for your one piece of the overall project. And you're kind of myopic in your scope because you're tracking one character and you're tracking one person's truth. And the difference with being a screenwriter is now you're tracking 28 people. And, what I really loved about Running Wild is our main cast was such intelligent, thinking actors and really invested in the storytelling. So as much as I may have thought like, oh, nailed it, then you get an actor whose job is only to track their characters. So Jason Lewis is a great example. He played our male lead, and he was very sensitive and, very political and kind about it, but was like, hey, can I have a discussion with you because, these three things really are bumping for me, and I don't know that this is what I would be saying in this moment, and I don't know where the emotional arc is. And so we made a lot of changes, which now having seen the film, they made it a million times better because, again, I was thinking of the whole story and he was tracking one individual to, make that as excellent as possible. I think that's where, the actors, again, if there's other actors who can write good characters, that's the thinking ones, that's really what they do. They're thinking about themselves in the overall picture. They're thinking about the storytelling. They're thinking about the purity of the message, and it just enhances it.
So let's talk a little bit about the collaboration on this script. I've written a lot of scripts with other people, and I'm always curious just to kind of hear how other people write, and maybe you can talk about that process. Were you guys physically in the same room? Did you guys use Skype? Did you divide up scenes, and then, you wrote a scene, he wrote a scene, and then you traded them? Maybe you can just talk through that process of collaborating.
Yeah, I would love to. So my co-writer's name is Brian Rudnick. And at first, we would meet in person, to pound out the outline, to pound out the beats, to just, we walked a lot. We sat in his living room, then we would take a walk, and, in terms of brainstorming and what would happen next, and, oh, is there a fire? Ah, no, I don't like a fire. Is there a car crash? And then once we had the outline, we did a lot of writing together. In those first 30 pages, literally pounding it out where I would act out things and, in terms of dialogue, and we had a shared screen and, he would type and then I would type and then we would read it back to each other. But then once we had kind of pounded out that first act and felt like it was really secure, we had also kind of just figured out who did what better. And so we would usually meet on a Tuesday, and we would discuss what the next, 6 scenes were going to be. And we would divvy them up, and it really was so easy, because I was like, oh yeah, no, I want the luncheon scene. He's like, yeah, I want the convicts in the, in the prison bus scene. I'm like, yeah, duh, you should have it. And it was really clear, and he ended up really primarily nailing the action and a lot of the more male-oriented, big, convict scenes and their backstories, and I was handling the female lead, the romance, and then the antagonism where Sharon Stone's character shows up. And we would then get that together on Friday and kind of trade and, stuff them all into the master script, and then, read through it and read through each other's stuff and read it out loud and make suggestions or make changes. And then that would kind of be the next piece that had been locked in, and we would repeat it again on the next Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. That's...
And, and that was really kind of what we did. And then in terms of certain different rewrites, like, I will always, my favorite scene in the film, which I do not want to say out loud because it might spoil it, but it's the one that I can never get through without crying. That came because, the script had been greenlit and we were going into production, and Brian was like, I've got one more pass. Let me just see if there's one more kind of little piece of magic I can foster and put in. And it was also great because we were wooing Tommy Flanagan to come be in our film, and I was able to say, like, hey, here you go. Here's a super scene, and it was just written, and it was written for you. And that was what got him on board in terms of coming to do the film.
I see.
And then once we were in production, because I was physically there, because I was, on set and dealing with the actors, when we got Sharon Stone on board, it was really last minute, and she made a lot of really smart, great suggestions for changes, but it was a huge reworking of the end. And at that point, I was really kind of on my own, because we were up in Northern California and we were in the middle of a horse ranch, and, just had to get done.
Yeah, sure.
And
sure.
so, and that way, then that was when I kind of just took over control of the script. And then it's, we lost the location, or, we can't find a pawn shop, so can they do this in a church parking lot? Those changes you just have to make, because that's the moving entity that is a film. And so that became my responsibility.
Yeah. So once you were done with the script, what were kind of your next steps to get this thing financed?
To get it financed?
Correct.
Is that what you asked?
Yep, exactly.
Well, this one's a little bit, magical and weird and different. It was basically financed before the script was written.
I see.
The financier wanted to tell a specific story, wanted to feature the, wild horses in the American West. And so it was just our job to get a script that he would approve of and that was fitting to what exactly he wanted, and the narrative was good. And then it was a foregone conclusion that it was going to be made. So, and that was also really helpful, I think, because, again, now having gone to the side of producing, when you know before you even start what kind of budget you're looking at, what kind of time restrictions you're looking at, it's like, oh, night scenes cost more than day scenes, and one location is absolutely your friend, and, you don't have time or money for 48 characters. So, you know what, there's one maid, and she has all the lines. Mm-hmm. Just ways in which you manipulate a script to fit within the budgetary and time restrictions. And so that was also part of a benefit, because it wasn't like, oh, I've written this glorious dreamscape with a unicorn, only to be told, that's never going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, no, you know exactly what you can and can't do.
Yeah. And I'm curious, was this financier, was he a horse lover, or was he a distributor or some sort of film buyer that understood the marketplace and knew that a horse film was something he could potentially sell?
No, our financier is Forrest Lucas of Lucas Oil. He owns the Colts football stadium. If once you know, like, oh, that's the insignia, you're like, I've seen it everywhere. There's trucks going by. It's in my, truck boys. He grew up on a farm. He still owns a cattle ranch, and he is, he's in his 70s, and part of his legacy is that he really wants to give a voice to the American farmer, the American rancher. I think that he feels like there's a lot of them that have been vilified. Every farmer is Monsanto, or every, dog owner abuses their animals, or every dog breeder is a puppy mill, and he really wanted to give a voice to a different side. So this was just a passion project. The distribution came later, which also is a bit of backwards. There's a lot about this production, and this is completely backwards.
Yeah. I'm curious. I get a lot of emails from people asking, how can you get this star or that star attached to their film? Do you have any insight on how you guys were able to get to Sharon Stone and ultimately get her to sign on to this project?
Yeah, money talks. I will say that. Like, we knew kind of what her quote was, and we went in with it's a fully funded offer. So that's not anything magical. That's just like, money talks. So, but then she read the script, and she did make a comment like, no, I'm going to pass on this project, but, I do love horses and tell them good luck, which was all that my boss needed, because he's one of those guys that loves a challenge. And so, can we get her on the phone? Is she willing to talk to me? And I think that was probably something that, she doesn't hear very often. So, yes, of course. And then we were on the phone with her, and she gave us script notes. And it was 6:00 on a Thursday night. And he then said, well, Christina will have new pages to you in the morning, to which I look across the room and I'm like, what? But I had taken notes on what she wanted, and I then, really brainstormed on how best to facilitate it. And so by, 6 a.m. the next day on Friday, I had 25 new pages to her. And by noon, she was kind of like, oh, that's a lot of hustle. And she's a major horse, equine advocate, and she rides horses. And so, I think that was enough for her to be like, okay, I don't know. There's something about you guys. There's a little pluck going on. Yeah, and that's how we did it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic
And
story.
Similar with Tommy Flanagan. Sorry?
That's a fantastic story.
Well, and it was similar with Tommy Flanagan, because the casting went to him with an offer, and he didn't immediately turn it down, but he did want to have a conversation. And of course, come to find out, he lives in Malibu, and he owns horses, and he's an avid rider, and so that is obviously why he was attracted to it. But then certain, can we make this change, and can we make that change? And the changes were not things that, I think they were things that made the film better, and certainly made his character more present and influential, and so we were happy to do it.
Yeah, perfect. So how can people see Running Wild? Do you know what the release schedule is going to be for it?
I do. Thank you for asking.
Sure.
It's a limited theatrical release, and it is Friday, February 10th, and it's also available on paid TV, so all of your video on demand, basically, on February 10th. The easiest way to figure out the information is runningwildmovie.com, and there's links to character bios and trailers, and we have a Facebook page, Running Wild. There's a Twitter account, but runningwildmovie.com will tell you every vendor. Are you Comcast? Are you DirecTV? Are you where to get your video on demand? And if it's in a theater, near you, you can go and watch it.
Perfect. So I will gather that and put it in the show notes. And is there any anything you do online with social media, Facebook, Twitter, that you personally do? And I can round those up as well if you're comfortable sharing that, just so people can kind of keep up and follow along with what you're
absolutely. Up to. I do Facebook. It's Christina Moore, and I do Instagram, which is at Lady Christina Moore. And there is a Twitter. I think it's at Christina Moore. I'm not sure. I don't do as much with it. But, if somebody wants to find me, they can find me. But I spend more time on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, perfect. So I will put those in the show notes as well. Christina, I really appreciate your coming on and talking with me today, and good luck with this film.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each one of our readers, and you can pick the one who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, characters, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline and synopsis writing service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your script gets a recommend from a reader, you get a free email and fax blast to my list of industry contacts. This is the exact same blast service I use myself to promote my own scripts, and it's the same service I sell on the website. It's a great way to get your script into the hands of producers who are looking for material. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing comedian, actor, producer, writer, and director Joey Medina. Joey has produced several films and recently shot a pilot episode of his new TV series, which he is pitching to various networks. We talk about all of this. We talk about his early career, how he got into comedy, and how he eventually made this feature film, and then also talk about his new TV series. Really fascinating story. He's a real do-it-yourselfer. He's got a lot of great advice. He's done a lot of great projects. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Christina. So there's a lot of great insight from today's interview. I think it's especially interesting to listen to her experience getting Sharon Stone attached. She was very positive about the notes that she got from Sharon Stone. But I think what people don't fully realize is how collaborative, especially writers coming into the business, they don't realize how collaborative this process is. And when I say collaborative, that's a very euphemistic term because that makes it sound like it's a very positive thing. And it sounds like Christina's experience was very positive. I know for myself, this has been a very big challenge in my own writing career. Writing on these low budget films, you get a lot of people, and the writer doesn't typically have much power at all. In fact, he has no power. Typically the producers will option buy the script, and you can either make the changes they want or not, but they're certainly not going to wait around for you. And a lot of times they're not even going to necessarily listen to a lot of reasons why you don't think they're good changes. So it can be a painful process too. But I think the thing that Christina really did that was really smart was she listened to what Sharon Stone, her comments, and then she implemented those comments very quickly. And this is really key because people, especially, actors, directors, they want to feel like they're involved in the creative process more than just showing up and getting a paycheck. And I think that's a lot of what it is. I get a lot of emails from people asking, how can I get this actor attached or that actor attached? And, a lot of it's pretty straightforward. It's a function of, number one, being a good salesman, acting professionally, submitting to their agent, calling their agent, and convincing their agent to read the script. And then if their agent reads it, convincing them to pass it on to the actor, getting that actor involved. The agents are used to dealing with filmmakers, and so if you don't have a lot of credits, you're going to get some run into some roadblocks with these agents. The agents are not necessarily going to be super thrilled with just reading a ton of material from filmmakers who with no track record or experience, because they're just going to figure those filmmakers are never actually going to get the project funded. So what you're going to find is they're going to say, well, we want a pay or play offer. They're going to, which basically means you're going to have to pay them whether you shoot the film or not, and you're going to be on the hook for their salary. And that's all fine, but you're going to need to get the funding first. And it sounds like in this case, Christina went to Sharon Stone with the funding, and that makes a big difference, because then you can go and actually make an offer to the actor. And again, it could be a pay or play offer. And at that point, you don't really care whether it's a pay or play offer, because you've got the film funded. So you're going to, you're going to make the film. So there's no real issue with that. If you don't have the film funded, you're not going to be able to confidently make that offer. And that's where you're going to run into the roadblocks. But once you get past all of that stuff, as I said, it's really going to be about making that actor or actress feel like they are part of the creative process. And I think just listening to what Christina said there, I think is very, very important. And it really makes this film a much bigger film. Getting a name actor attached like Sharon Stone into the film, it just really brings it to a whole nother level of exposure. So I think that was a really smart move on her part, listening to what Sharon Stone had to say and then implementing those notes quickly. And what that did is it made Sharon Stone feel like, these filmmakers were taking her seriously. They weren't just trying to get her in the film because she was a big name. They were actually trying to get her in the film and use, her creative ideas. And that's all very important. I also think another very interesting thing about this film is the funding, the way Christina talks about how this film got funded. And this is, again, something that newer writers I don't think fully understand. Making money from an independent feature film is a very, very difficult thing to do, no matter who you are or what you're doing, no matter what actors you have in the film. It's a very difficult task to make money from an independent feature film. And I've been talking about my own film, The Pinch, and as time goes on, I'll be sharing those numbers with you, and you will see, hopefully you'll see the film, and then hopefully you can kind of see my experience as I go through it with the distributors. It's going to be a very tough thing for me to make money from The Pinch, even though my budget is incredibly low, and even though half the film was funded through Kickstarter. But the sort of the point that I'm getting at with all that is listen to what Christina said about how they funded this film. They found someone that was interested in, sort of bringing attention to wild horses and horses in general, and was not that concerned with ROI and return on investment. And, trying to find people who want to invest in films for other reasons besides the ROI, because it's very difficult to go to someone who's going to potentially finance your film and say, listen, this is just a great investment. You're going to invest $1 million and you're going to make $2 million. I mean, virtually no producer can honestly look the person in the eye and say that. And so a lot of these independent films, it becomes a way of financing it in a way that is not so ROI specific. They don't put the emphasis on the ROI because it's difficult to get a return on investment on these types of films. And if you can find those people that want to bring attention to a particular subject and craft a story around that, then those people are not so concerned about the numbers. Well, how much money am I going to make from this film? Because it's a difficult equation. And again, depending on your level of integrity, it's very difficult to look them in the eye and say, oh yeah, I think we're going to make money from this. Again, with The Pinch, I think it's a real possibility. I'm not only not going to make money, I'm probably going to lose a lot of my money that I personally invested in it. And that's fine. That's all part of the process. And just a couple of specific examples. Over the last couple of years on this podcast, I've talked about my baseball comedy. And, that's an example we are trying, and the producer that we were working with, he was trying to do something similar to what Christina talked about. It's a baseball comedy. It takes place at a minor league stadium. So this producer was going to a minor league team and saying, listen, we want to shoot this movie here, and we will rewrite the script to incorporate your specific team, and it could be a marketing piece. And then instead of the baseball team thinking, well, how much, and then the producer was trying to get them to put in some of the money to finance the film. And that's a pretty good way of approaching it, because then you don't have to worry about, again, making it's not a dollars for dollar. You don't have to make, if you invest $1 million, you don't have to make $1 million back, because it becomes a marketing piece for the baseball team. If the baseball team invests some of the money, let's just say the budget was $1 million to make the math easy. If the baseball team invests, let's say half the money, $500,000, and they don't get all of that money back, that's totally fine for them, because it becomes more a function of how far and wide can we get this film. They don't care that Netflix doesn't pay very much. They just want to get their film on Netflix for the exposure. And the internet in this day and age, you can put it up even on something like YouTube for free. Again, you're not going to make dollars back from it, but you're going to potentially get exposure. And that's a great way to sort of think about these things, and finding people who might invest in your film but don't necessarily care about the ROI is a really smart way to go. I've had this idea bouncing around for years. I've never gotten around to actually doing it. If anybody wants it, this idea, take it. It's all yours. But I always thought it would be interesting to write a romantic comedy that revolved around internet dating. Internet dating is huge. Lots of people meet online. And again, if you could then write a really cute, clever, upbeat script that really highlights the positive aspects of internet dating, you could then go to one of these companies that is Match.com or plentyoffish.com, one of these internet dating sites, and you could try and get them to potentially fund the movie. And again, it doesn't become all about the ROI. It becomes more of a marketing piece for them, and they invest in the movie not so much to make an ROI, but just to highlight and showcase their particular service. And you could rewrite the script to, if you're able to get something like Match.com involved, you could rewrite the script and actually incorporate that specific brand into your script as the service that these people are using and having success with. And again, I think that would be something, if you could find the right people at Match.com, whoever makes those decisions, the marketing director, the CEO, whoever, if you could get to that person and pitch them, that might be something that they would be interested in. And again, it wouldn't be a ton of money for a big company like a Plenty of Fish or a Match.com. These are huge companies making, with revenues in the millions of dollars, investing, $500,000 or even $200,000 in a feature film that could potentially showcase their service in a new and interesting way, might be something that they would be interested in. But you could probably come up with 100 ideas that are similar to this, and I would encourage you to think along those lines. I think also Kickstarter is another way of doing this, is you're cutting out the distributor and the middleman. I mean, once I find a distributor for the pinch, that distributor is going to take probably a third of all the money that comes through. I mean, that's just kind of standard. You'll sign a deal with them, and any money that they make, they get to keep a third or more. A lot of them are 35%, 50%. A lot of these distributors take a lot of the money, and they take, a lot of times they'll take like the first money in to cover some of their hard costs, supposed hard costs. So they might say, well, the first $30,000 that comes in, that we're going to keep that to recoup all of our marketing costs, and then we start doing a split. Well, the chances of the pinch actually making above that marketing cost of that $30,000 the distributor's going to take is a very, very small. It becomes very more. The chances of the filmmaker seeing money becomes more and more, or I'd say less and less likely. And whereas if you do something like Kickstarter, again, you're going directly to the people who want to see the movie. You're cutting out those middlemen, and I think that's a very great and powerful thing. And I like Kickstarter, and as I said, I use Kickstarter for my own film, and hopefully I'll be able to use that again in the future, because you're able to make a movie. Let's just say again, using the example of the pinch, the total budget was $28,000, and I raised almost half that money through Kickstarter. So now the actual hard dollars into that are basically just about cut in half. So I only need to make about $14,000 of hard dollars, or $15,000 of hard dollars to actually get the money back. And again, that's another way where you're not so hung up on this ROI. You invest $1 million and you have to get $1 million back. If you could build your Kickstarter following up a little bit, and let's say raise $100,000, and then through Kickstarter, and then $100,000 to other sources, then you have a $200,000 movie, but it only cost $100,000, and your real true fans are getting the film first, and so they're getting some benefit as well. So it's really a sort of a win-win. The people who want to see the movie are helping to fund the movie. They're getting to see the film first. They're getting to be involved in the process. So again, Kickstarter is another way of funding that I think takes the sort of the pressure off of that real hard ROI type of investment that a lot of people are who are investing money. When you're investing in like a startup, a tech company, a tech startup or something, that's all about ROI. It's all about how many dollars we're going to put in and how many dollars we're going to get back. But movies, I think, are different. There is a sort of creative aspect that people just are attracted to, and there's other things. And I think being smart as a producer, as a writer, and as a writer and potentially a writer producer, I think thinking along these lines is a really smart way to go. And again, that's kind of what I'm trying to do is I just see, I've been around long enough to see how difficult it is to make money off of these independent films. And if you can just somehow step away from that and start to think a little bit differently, I think it can go a long way. And again, I think what Christina did with this film, I think it kind of goes along those lines, is an actual real live working example at a pretty high level. Again, Sharon Stone is a pretty big movie star to get in your film. So I think it's a real good example of all this. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.